We're counting down the 10 forgotten fruits your grandparents once grew, heirloom treasures buried by big agriculture. From unusual backyard berries lost to factory farms, to deep-flavored orchard fruits erased by shipping and supermarket demands. Each entry reveals a lost flavor and a story of resilience. Which vanished fruit tops the list as the ultimate comeback? Welcome, bloomers! If you love the smell of fresh soil and the joy of growing something with your own two hands, you're in the right place. Before we begin, tell us where you're from and what time it is there in the comments below. I love seeing how our circle grows. Let's begin our countdown with number 10. Ground cherries once brightened backyard gardens across the Northeast and Midwest, their golden fruits hidden inside delicate, papery husks. These sweet pineapple vanilla flavored berries were a staple in 19th century pies and preserves, picked up from the soil by children and grandparents alike. But as agriculture raced toward efficiency in the 1950s, ground cherries slipped quietly out of sight. Mechanical harvesters designed for hardier crops crushed or scattered the fragile fruits, making them nearly impossible to gather at scale. Big farms dropped them from their fields, and supermarkets lost interest in anything that couldn't survive the journey from field to shelf. Yet ground cherries outshine apples in one key way. They're packed with beta-carotene, giving them more vitamin A activity than most common fruits. For gardeners today, the secret is simple: start seeds indoors, and when the husked fruits fall, let them ripen on the ground for unmatched sweetness. Small farms in the Midwest and Ontario are reviving these old favorites, offering seeds online so anyone can rediscover the taste their grandparents knew by heart. Black mulberry trees once stood at the center of American home life, planted for shade and for the deep, sweet berries that stained hands and lips purple every summer. Imported in the 1600s for a silk industry that never took off, their fruit became a staple for pies, wines, and syrup. So beloved that Thomas Jefferson grew them at Monticello. But by the early 20th century, nursery catalogs began favoring sterile, ornamental mulberries. City ordinances labeled fruiting trees as a nuisance, citing stained sidewalks and the need for constant cleanup. Less than 2% of mulberry trees sold in the U.S. today bear fruit. The rest are chosen for their tidy appearance. This quiet policy shift erased a powerful source of vitamin C and resveratrol from everyday diets, along with the berry's rich anthocyanins. For those seeking the old flavor and health benefits, the secret is space. Let fallen fruit feed wildlife or backyard chickens, and plant fruiting varieties away from walkways. Heirloom growers in Tennessee and Virginia now offer cuttings, reviving a tree that once fed generations, one backyard at a time. The service berry, also called Juneberry, once signaled the true arrival of spring on the frontier. Its white blooms appeared just as the ground thawed enough to hold funeral services, giving the plant its memorable name. For indigenous nations and fur trappers, these berries were more than a sweet snack. They were survival food. Dried service berries, mixed with meat and fat, became pemmican, a high-energy staple that fueled long journeys and harsh winters. Today, nutrition scientists are stunned by what's inside each purple berry. Service berries contain nearly 3 times the antioxidants of blueberries and a surge of vitamin C, making them a powerhouse for immune health and aging bodies. Polyphenol studies from Minnesota and Alberta field trials confirm these berries pack more nutritional punch than most supermarket fruits. Modern gardeners are rediscovering the plant's resilience. It thrives in partial sun, shrugs off drought, and asks little in return. Planting 2 varieties ensures a bounty of fruit, and small farms are now bringing service berries back to markets and home gardens, a quiet revival of one of North America's most nourishing wild foods. Damson plums once filled English hedgerows and American backyards, their small, deep blue fruits destined for jam pots and gin bottles. Settlers brought damson pits from Yorkshire and Kent in the 1700s. planting them across the Atlantic, where they thrived in chilly winters and poor soils. For generations, damsons were a staple of cottage gardens, self-fertile, easy to prune after harvest, and so cold-hardy they survived where other plums failed. But by the 1920s, a new force shaped the American fruit bowl. California packing boards, backed by USDA grading committees, pushed supermarkets to favor big, glossy Japanese plums. Packing records from Santa Clara Valley show how smaller, tart damsons were dropped from shipping lists, their astringency and size deemed unfit for long-distance transport. Lobbying by these boards made shelf appeal king, and damsons vanished from produce aisles almost overnight. What disappeared with them wasn't just flavor. It was a source of natural fiber, potassium, and sorbitol, a gentle digestive aid prized in old home remedies. Today, damsons are making a quiet return, celebrated at Shropshire's Damson Days Festival and offered by heirloom growers for backyard orchards. Their resilience and nutritional punch offer gardeners a fruit that asks little and gives plenty. Proof that some of the best harvests still come from the margins. Beach plums once dotted the wild Atlantic dunes from Maine down to Maryland, their tangled bushes holding clusters of small, tart, sweet fruit. Colonial families gathered these plums each summer, boiling them down for jam and wine, a tradition so old that Samuel de Champlain wrote of the plum's abundance in 1605. But the landscape changed in a single night. In September 1938, a hurricane swept across New England, flattening coastal groves and burying centuries-old fruit patches under sand and debris. As towns rebuilt, developers replaced dunes with houses and roads, erasing habitat that beach plums needed to survive. By the 1950s, what had once been a staple of community pantries was nearly gone, a casualty of both natural disaster and the hunger for real estate. Modern nutrition studies show that beach plums are richer in vitamin E and anthocyanins than most supermarket plums, offering antioxidants that support heart and skin health. Their bushes, only 6 to 8 feet tall, thrive in sandy, salty soil where little else will grow, making them a smart choice for coastal gardeners. Cape Cod farms now tend new groves, harvesting the fruit for small batch jams and liqueurs that carry the taste of sea air and sun. For those who plant them, the secret is resilience. Beach plums can weather storms, salt spray, and shifting sands, offering both beauty and bounty where others fail. Mayhaw trees rise from the flooded bottoms of Louisiana and East Texas, their branches heavy with small red fruit that ripens just as spring floods recede. For generations, families gathered mayhaws by canoe, scooping the berries from creeks and swampy thickets to make the jelly that crowned southern breakfast tables. By the 1980s, the story nearly ended. Logging companies pushed deeper into the delta, draining wetlands and bulldozing ancient groves. In the dark, members of the Louisiana Mayhaw Cooperative slipped through the cutover woods, rescuing seedlings by flashlight before the bulldozers arrived. These midnight missions saved not only the trees, but a tradition stretching back to the 1800s. Mayhaw jelly owes its tart-sweet flavor to the fruit's rich vitamin C and ellagic acid, compounds now studied for immune and heart health. Folk healers called it a spring tonic, and modern lab tests confirm its antioxidant power rivals that of cranberries. Unlike most orchard fruits, mayhaws thrive in soggy, low-lying ground, but can adapt to backyard gardens with regular watering. Growers recommend planting young trees in the wettest spot you have, where apples and peaches would drown. Each May, communities gather for mayhaw festivals, trading recipes, and jars of jewel-red jelly, a living proof that a fruit nearly erased by industry can return thanks to neighbors who refuse to let it disappear. Quince trees arrived in America with the earliest European settlers, packed alongside apple and pear cuttings in the holds of ships bound for new homesteads. By the 1700s, nearly every pioneer garden from New England to the Carolinas sheltered a quince, its gnarled branches offering golden, aromatic fruit that perfumed kitchens each autumn. In California's Santa Clara Valley, growers harvested over 2 million pounds of quince in 1910, shipping barrels east for preserves and pie fillings. But as the 20th century wore on, the market began to favor fruit that could be eaten fresh and out of hand. Quince, with its dense, astringent flesh, demanded slow simmering or baking to unlock its flavor, a ritual that faded as supermarkets filled with crisp apples and juicy pears. Lost in that shift was a fruit rich in antiviral phenolics and dietary fiber, with vitamin C levels that rival citrus. Oral histories from the Great Depression recall families in Connecticut and Ohio boiling quince into syrup, stretching the harvest through long winters when sugar and jam were scarce. Some of those trees, now over 50 years old, still stand behind old barns and stone walls, quietly producing fruit for anyone willing to cook it. For gardeners, quince offers a lesson in endurance. Prune for airflow to ward off blight, and harvest when the fruit glows yellow and fragrant. In Turkey, Iran, and Greece, quince remains a kitchen essential, proof that taste and tradition can outlast the whims of commerce. For those seeking a fruit that weathers both drought and fashion, the quince endures as a golden promise in the orchard. American crabapple trees once anchored the first orchards of North America, their tough roots and wild genetics shaping the backbone of colonial and indigenous foodways. By 1905, horticultural surveys counted over 800 distinct native crabapple strains growing from Maine to the Great Lakes, each one adapted to local soil, climate, and disease. These trees weren't just survivors, they were the genetic insurance policy for the entire apple family, thriving where imported European varieties often failed. Native nations and early settlers pressed crabapples into vinegar and cider, cooked them into preserves, and used their tartness to balance sweet fruits in pies and sauces. In the 18th and 19th centuries, orchardists grafted prized European apple varieties onto native crabapple rootstock, borrowing their resilience to weather, pests, and blight. But the rise of industrial farming and nursery consolidation changed everything. Commercial orchards, chasing bigger and sweeter apples for distant markets, dismissed crabapples as too small, too tart, or too wild-looking for modern shelves. Over generations, bulldozers and imported trees erased local strains. Today, fewer than 10 Native American crabapple strains survive in the wild, a collapse that leaves modern orchards vulnerable to disease and climate stress. Scientists at Cornell now scour old homesteads and forest edges, collecting scionwood and seeds to rebuild this lost genetic bank. Enthusiast groups like the North American Fruit Explorers trade cuttings through the mail, determined to keep these rare trees alive. Crabapples pack a nutritional punch. Wild fruit analyses show polyphenol and antioxidant levels far higher than most supermarket apples. Their presence in a home orchard boosts pollination for other apples and pears, and their fruit makes bright, tangy jellies loaded with healthful acids. For gardeners, grafting a heritage crabapple is more than nostalgia. It's an act of conservation. Each tree planted helps restore a living library of flavors and traits, safeguarding the diversity that once made American orchards strong. Medlar trees once stood as a badge of sophistication in European gardens, their fruit praised by Chaucer and Shakespeare for both its oddity and flavor. Unlike any apple or plum, the medlar demands patience and a leap of faith. Picked hard and pale in late autumn, the fruit is inedible until it softens and browns, a process called bledding that Victorian naturalists found both fascinating and unsettling. Only after weeks in a cool pantry or nestled in straw does the medlar's flesh turn to spiced caramel, its sharpness mellowed into a texture reminiscent of apple butter. This transformation, so central to the medlar's charm, doomed it in the age of the supermarket. Retailers wanted fruit that looked perfect and stayed firm, not something that ripened by appearing to rot. After World War II, as visual grading standards tightened, medlars vanished from produce aisles and nursery catalogs across Britain and the U.S. Yet the medlar's story is not just about lost aesthetics. It's about lost nutrition. British researchers have found that bledded medlars are rich in vitamin C, dietary fiber, and rare organic acids with anti-inflammatory benefits. Small trees, hardy to Zone 5, they thrive in backyard gardens and require little care. For the curious grower, the trick is to harvest medlars once they detach easily, then let them blet indoors on a cool windowsill until the skin yields under gentle pressure. Norfolk farmers and artisan producers in France now bring medlars back for winter jams and Christmas desserts, celebrating flavors that defy supermarket uniformity. In an era obsessed with surface beauty, the medlar offers a reminder: sometimes the best taste comes after a little patience and a willingness to look past appearances. Pawpaw trees once lined riverbanks and woodlots from Michigan to Florida, their heavy green fruits feeding families and wildlife through lean years and long summers. In the 1800s, settlers in Appalachia and the Midwest counted on the pawpaw's creamy mango-banana flesh as a rare treat, so prized that George Washington preferred his pawpaws chilled for dessert. Yet for all its flavor and nutrition, the pawpaw all but vanished from American markets. The reason was simple and unforgiving. Pawpaws spoil within days of picking. Their thin skins bruise at the slightest touch, turning black and soft long before they could survive a train ride or a week in a grocer's bin. By the time refrigerated rail cars and USDA grading standards set the rules for what belonged on store shelves, the pawpaw was written off as too fragile, too odd-shaped, and too messy for the new world of industrial produce. What was lost stretched beyond taste. Pawpaws deliver nearly triple the vitamin C of apples, more magnesium than a banana, and a cocktail of antioxidants that modern studies link to heart and brain health. In the wild, they need company. 2 different pawpaw varieties planted nearby, so pollinators can do their work. For generations, this knowledge passed quietly from gardener to gardener, even as supermarkets forgot the fruit entirely. In the 1980s, Neil Peterson, a plant breeder from West Virginia, took up the pawpaw's cause. When universities and grant agencies dismissed his efforts as hopeless, he mortgaged his house to keep going. Peterson spent decades hand-pollinating, tasting, and selecting the best fruit from old homesteads and river valleys, determined to breed a pawpaw that could tempt modern growers. His work paid off. Today, small orchards in Ohio and Kentucky offer pawpaws at farmers markets, and specialty nurseries ship trees and seeds to gardeners across the country. For those willing to try, the secret is to plant in moist, partly shaded soil and to protect young trees from deer and rabbits. With patience, the reward is a fruit unlike any other, tropical, custardy, and packed with nutrients, a living memory of the forests and families that once depended on it. In a world that traded flavor for shelf life, the pawpaw stands as proof that some treasures are worth reclaiming, one backyard at a time. From the delicate ground cherry to the elusive pawpaw, this countdown has uncovered 10 forgotten fruits that once anchored American gardens and tables. What stands out across all entries is how industrial agriculture, market preferences, and even city ordinances systematically erased these fruits, not because they lacked taste or nutrition, but because they didn't fit a narrow vision of uniformity, shippability, or appearance. The most shocking entries, like the pawpaw's disappearance due to spoilage and the medlar's rejection for its unconventional ripening, reveal how flavor and biodiversity were sacrificed for shelf life and market convenience. Patterns emerge. Every fruit ranked here vanished when resilience, diversity, and local tradition were sidelined by mass production. These lost varieties, many richer in vitamins, antioxidants, or unique flavors than their commercial replacements, remind us that our food system's roots are deeper and more diverse than what's in grocery aisles today. The real story of forgotten fruits is one of resilience, adaptation, and the ongoing power of gardeners and communities to revive what was nearly lost.